Oh.
Oh, hey James. Welcome
Hey
to this
there.
stream. I can't remember who we have on this week. I think it's that Babs
It's
after
Bab After Dark.
Bab in the evening. Oh my God, it's Bob! Look, there he is.
Oh.
Oh, hey there, everyone.
Hey there, Bob.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Norm. How are you?
I am doing pretty well. How are you?
Oh, nothing like the recovery men of the century.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's live stream. This is Windy City Presents Why We Bust. Your weekly live streaming experience. We'll be bringing you a Ghostbuster every week, and just kind of digging into who they are, why they do this, why the heck are they doing this, why on earth would they be doing this?
That's the correct answer.
So it'll be every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. Join us here, and we will be interviewing folks. I'm your host, Krystyn, your friendly neighborhood level 5 roaming vapor. We've got on socials, we've got James. He's our IT socials guy. And yeah, today we have the honor of having Bob of Bob After Dark. Hi, Bob.
World famous Bob of Bob After Dark.
Oh, geez. Now you're going to be inflating my ego, and I'm not going to be able to walk out the door.
Hey. You can tell the story of who gave you that title.
You did it. You should be the one to tell that story, because if I do it, I'm just going to sound like an egomaniac.
So, Bob and I and Steve and Jose and some more friends from Circle City all went to the Ghostbusters Fan Expo, and Mr. Bob over here cheesed up Mr. Dan Aykroyd. Quite a bit. And actually at his panel, which he personally invited Bob to, no less. Watched all this myself, as I can state that this is all factual. At the event, at the panel, he specifically called Bob, the world famous Bob Anderson from Bob After Dark.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's quite the title.
And the rest of the interview is downward from there.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. That's the only interesting thing about me. See you guys later. Have a good night.
Yeah, that's
play the outro.
Well, Bob, you've been watching, I assume.
I have watched every episode, and I even hosted 2 of them.
That's fair. But you know how I kind of like to start these interviews out a little bit. I want to go back in time. Back
how far?
At minimum 10 years, maybe 12.
Okay.
Actually, let's go back to your childhood, Bob.
Oh, okay. Yes. Let me pretend I'm laying on my couch here and paying you $45 an hour.
What is your first Ghostbuster memory? Going from your first Ghostbuster memory to now, being given the world famous title.
That is a stretch. I was the #1 paranormal podcast in Costa Rica, so I guess that counts for something.
It absolutely does.
So I wish I could tell you the first time I ever saw Ghostbusters, but I could tell you the first time I remember seeing Ghostbusters, but I could tell you that wasn't the first.
Fair.
So many moons ago, right? And this specifically goes out to from millennials backwards. So the alphas and the Gen Z won't get this, but many moons ago, we used to go to this place called the Video Rental Store, right?
Oh yeah.
And the Video Rental Store was literally it was a facility where you would go and you would have a membership card. And you would go and rent a feature film or several episodes of a cartoon or something on these black boxes called VHS, right?
Ancient
technology. I'm talking like chiseling things with stone. That's how far back we went. I remember going there, and I remember I've seen Ghostbusters before that, but I can't pinpoint when. But I got to rent Ghostbusters 1 for like family movie night, and I don't think that was a proper term, but that's the best thing I could come up with. My parents took me to the local place, which was called Tape Escape, by the way. We went and we rented Ghostbusters 1, and then like the following week we went and rented Ghostbusters 2. But the clerk screwed up and gave us a copy of Ghostbusters 1 again, and we didn't realize until we got home and put it in the VCR. And I remember my dad was both the happiest person in the world and the most disgruntled person in the world. I was probably like 7, 8 years old right at the time, maybe 6. And my dad's like, "This is the same movie." I'm like, "No, Dad, the librarian didn't walk down the stairs in the first opening shot of Ghostbusters 1. He's like, "It's the same movie." He turned it off. He's like, "It's Ghostbusters 1. And I only wanted to watch Ghostbusters 2 when I was like 7, right? I like Ghostbusters 1, but I like Ghostbusters 2 more. And that hasn't changed in 30 years. I am still much more of a Ghostbusters 2 fan than I am a 1, but you get the idea. Yes.
I've seen you in chat every time I ask that question to folks, and that's always your comment. The only right answer is Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2 is the only correct answer, but don't get me wrong. I like Ghostbusters media. There's not one bit of Ghostbusters media that they put out that I don't like, but I just happen to like 2 the most. And I think I know why. Do you want to know why?
Absolutely. That's why we're here. We're going to learn all about you.
So ever since I was a wee lad, I've always been interested in spooky stuff and horror movies and like things that go bump in the night, right? Ghostbusters 2 is way more of a horror film than Ghostbusters 1 is.
Fair.
Ghostbusters 1 is like I don't really know. It's got horror elements to it, but Ghostbusters 2, man, you got the heads on the pikes. You got the Scoleri brothers that were legitimately terrifying. I remember Janusz's eyes lighting up the hallway during the blackout when he went to go visit Dana Barrett's apartment. And GB2, for that reason, is the scarier out of them. Ghostbusters 1, there was only one thing that was legitimately terrifying, and that was the cab driver ghost.
Fair,
but rest of all the ghosts in Ghostbusters 1 and all of the, the characters and stuff are a little bit more lively. They're a little bit more cartoony. It's easier to advertise a movie to kids with this green snot ball eating hot dogs, whereas Ghostbusters
inducing.
Whereas Ghostbusters 2, it's like, you see this haunted painting? Well, it wants to kidnap a kid, right? And then the Ghostbusters are going to go down in the subway and they're going to run across legitimate heads on pikes.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I like Ghostbusters.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I still love it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I love them all. So
fair. What were your thoughts on the new movie?
Frozen Empire?
Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, a really long episode of the real Ghostbusters. I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite in the franchise. I would put it somewhere right in the middle. The reason why I liked it as much as I did is because my boy Ray Stans got some amazing screen time in that movie. And there was more like lore behind him and podcast, which is who I'm like the guy now. I more correlate with podcasting these days. And the relationship between those two is so humorous and it's so heart touching. And I love the Raise a Cult stuff in Ghostbusters too, because that's all I want. I want a spin-off series on Netflix of just Ray Stans working in an occult bookstore. That's all I want.
Yeah, honestly, that would be insane. That would be amazing.
Now, Eric, if you're watching this, Eric Reich's the producer of Ghostbusters now, and he's I would call him a friend at this point. Eric, if you're watching this and you're looking to cast young Dan Aykroyd for like him learning about the paranormal, I'm your guy.
He's your guy. He really is. He already knows most of, like everything about ghosts in general. So
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So like the research is already there.
I would say so.
Well, when it comes to like, if you're in the mood to watch something in general, though, Ghostbusters related, are you turning on a movie or one of the TV shows, like the cartoon shows?
Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of it. Extreme Ghostbusters it was what I grew up with, right? Because I was born in the year 1990. No, not the year 1900, which some of these younger kids these days may say. I
Were
was
you
born in
born in the
1990.
1900s?
Were you born in the 1900s? Yeah, I guess I was. Back in 1990, I missed, obviously, Ghostbusters, Real Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2.
Mm.
I didn't miss it, but I didn't catch it live. What I did catch live was Extreme Ghostbusters, and I ate it up as a kid, man. I still have all of my toys. I have pretty much the entire line of them, excluding the Garrett prototype, which not many people own that anyway. I have my first Proton pack still from the Extreme Ghostbusters toy one. That was my first pack. I still have it to this day. That was fun to throw that on my back and run around the front yard busting ghosts in like 1997. And the animation and the story and the character development and the interaction between them is so real. Then all pun intended, I guess. In my opinion, the interaction of Extreme Ghostbusters is more lifelike than the actual rest of the franchise. And I know that sounds stupid. And I know there's probably people knocking at my front door with pitchforks. But hear me out, right? Extreme Ghostbusters isn't about people that went to do this, right? It was as if you stuck a room full of Winstons together and you made a TV show about these people trying to figure out what it is about being a Ghostbuster. And Extreme Ghostbusters had the most diversity out of anything the franchise ever had. You know, you had the goth girl, you had the guy in the wheelchair, you had two members of the POC community, you know, and they touched on subjects like there was an anti-Semitism episode with the Golem. There's episodes talking about death and like how that's an actual fear that people have. They talk about fear in general. And in my opinion, Extreme Ghostbusters tackles the concept of fear with children, like teaching kids how to handle fear, than I think any form of media has ever done. The episode Fear itself is so good. If you got little ones that are into Ghostbusters, I always tell people to watch that episode with their kids, because that one's a good one to like explain what is it like to be afraid of things, you know, when it dives into stuff. A lot of the community hates on that cartoon so much, and I don't get it, because I guess it's different and whatever. I don't care anyway. The community can fight me if they want. But I love Extreme Ghostbusters so much. It's so good. And it has shaped me almost into the person I am today. I even rock my ponytail to this day, almost as an homage to Extreme Ghostbusters Egon.
Heck yeah. That's amazing. I didn't realize the connection there. That's awesome.
Yes.
So running forward a little, how did you go from, I love the Ghostbusters movies and the franchise and the TV shows and all the things, to I would like to join a group of other Ghostbusters and do a thing? Where did that connection happen of like, how did you find out about groups coming together, and how did you
I didn't.
No.
I had a vague idea, because at the time when I first started going to cons, Windy City Ghostbusters wasn't a thing yet, and it was Ghostbusters Chicago division. So I have vague memories of like early 20s Bob seeing like them. I'm like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool. It's like a costume group, because I didn't even really understand what cosplay was until I was in my middle and upper 20s. I did convention life, but I never cosplayed, because nothing looks as handsome as this, right? I did an animated Justice League animated series Aquaman cosplay once, and I did a John Constantine cosplay once. That was it. Yeah. But I'm going to tell the story very quickly, because it's very strange how the journey went. So a friend of mine gets this Proton pack in a trade for plastic toys. He got his costume pretty much by trading it for these pieces in a miniatures game called HeroClix, right? Okay. And so he got his Proton pack and he got all of his gear from it. And he was like, oh, dude, you know, look what I'm doing, you know? And he's going out and he's walking around taking pictures. And I'm like, I could do that, right? And at the time, I was fresh out of like my longest relationship I was ever in. I was working a job that I physically hated and that was sucking the soul out of me. And I got my first real big paycheck from the job working all this overtime. And I remember telling my mom, she was like, wow, you've never gotten a check like that before. I was used to working in a movie theater up to that point. I had never seen a check like that. And I was like, you know what I'm doing with this check? What are you doing with this check? Oh, I'm buying a proton pack. And my mom stared at me. My dad, more or less, too, stared at me. And what? Oh, I'm buying a proton pack, and I'm getting a suit and patches, and I'm gonna be a Ghostbuster. Now it's funny, and I have to trail back to the original story that I, from where I got into it. I remember growing up, my mom would, my mom, dad, whatever, would ask me, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And my answer was always, "Hey, I want to be a Ghostbuster."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my mom specifically looking at me, and my mom is, one of my biggest fans in the entire world, right? If not my biggest fan in the entire world. And, she supported me through and through, but, at some point you got to draw the line, and it's like, Ghostbusting's not a real job. All right. So I'm going to prove you wrong. Right. So fast forward 20 years, I get my proton pack in the mail, and I bought it. We found a post on Instagram from a builder, and I'm on the tail end of the last, I don't want to use the term building generation, but I'm like the last generation of that. Like, there were no 3D printers like where we were at now when I first started. Things were a little bit more accepted, more available. Like castings were a little bit more popular, like at that time. So we had a lot of casted parts, not printed parts. And you kind of had to improvise, right? Back in the day,
This is before
clipper valves
Spirit and everything, right?
Right. Clipper valves were fill canisters.
Yeah.
The one that sits on your wand, on your neutrino wand, we used whiteout containers, right? So in the famous one, and I always pick on the older guys for it, because this wasn't my generation, but I know people that have packs to this day that have it. But the cake pan was the cyclotron.
Oh.
And so you would get this cake pan and you would drill holes in it and you'd have your cyclotron. And that's how proton packs were built. Funny enough, we have Norm in the call now. Back then, we had these things called Norm plans, which was like the go-to for everything. Any prop you wanted to build Ghostbusters related to, this Norm guy had it figured out. Not this Norm, unless he was that Norm and he never came forward.
It's not me, no.
And no, the first like slime blower builds were from like Norm plans and stuff,
Okay.
And it was like, hey, you see this random bib bob on this proton pack? Well, unless you have money to shell out for like, this really expensive, stupid brass fitting, banjos or whatever they're called, I'm not a builder, by the way. I'm far from it. We had to make do with what we had. I mean, I ordered before I knew what, because when we were ghostbusting back then, I didn't really understand what it was I was doing. It was an elaborate, I was fresh out of college. I'm single, I'm trying to figure myself out. And I went to film school, right? And I wanted to kind of move from behind the camera to in front of the camera. I wanted to start doing more talent related things. And so this was like more or less an elaborate improvisational thing, is a lack of a better term. I wanted to see people's reactions. In college, they taught us the term Garfinkeling, which is the idea of doing something just to see somebody's reaction. So I would do that as more or less a social experiment, or more or less for, people to pay attention to me, because I'm at this awkward stage. Yeah. Nobody ever tells you how awkward your middle 20s are, right?
Oh my God.
I get to my middle 20s. I decided to be a Ghostbuster, and I went to the first St. Patrick's Day parade I went to with the Windy City Ghostbusters. We got invited to it. And that was when I learned really what a franchise was. And I got to understand how Ghostbusters act and how Ghostbusters react. And, that's what I understood about the charity aspect. The closest thing I got to charity at that point was, there's a heartwarming story of me and taking a picture with this little boy in my local hometown, dressed as a Ghostbuster, and his mom posted this photo and said, the guys made my son happy. That was charity for me. It was like going and making somebody happy. I never thought about the concept of doing this in reality, this really stupid thing. And I get to go and physically raise funds for it.
Yeah.
Once we got involved with Windy City, I joined Windy City at the time, and we had our own franchise. We were the South Shore Ghostbusters, and we just called ourselves that. But there was nothing. There was substance, but it was more or less us just kind of screwing around than it was like something like we legitimately have now.
Mm-hmm.
And from Windy City, when I got involved, I just kind of got, because I don't ever take anything easy. Whenever I get involved in something, whatever I get involved with something, maybe it's the hyperfixation in me, but I get on the ground running. If there was one thing I wasn't good at, it was building things, right? I was not a builder. Do not ask me to build proton pack parts for you. Do not ask me how these things work. I am not that guy. In fact, I am so not that guy. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say, do you know of any, like, if I know you said you don't build, but do you know of any way to like adhese things together?
I know where you're going with this.
Any good like glues that work really well on that? Maybe?
All right. I'm assuming James got to you.
It wasn't
Not me.
James.
What? James didn't tell you that.
No.
All right. So before we were,
You already got one in the chat going, Bob, no glue.
Yeah, that's my partner.
Oh,
Thanks.
also, Circle City wants you to talk in length about carcinogens.
Carcinogens happen when you're sitting at a bonfire in Indianapolis, Indiana, and they're just adding nonsense to a fire, and it's carcinogens, man. You're using these easy light logs to start a fire. That's carcinogens.
Fair. So glue.
Shout out to Circle City Ghostbusters. So back when we were starting Ghostbusting, right? We would trying to make things work prop wise. It was the Wild West, right? We didn't have master builders, right? These days, I can go to Norm, I can go to Jason Stad, I can go to Joe Gagliano, I could go to even Josh Deesdale being one of the best, Krystyn Lappish. There's all these people in and around our group that builds props really well. Tony, I could keep naming names, but you have all these people that are really good master prop builders, but we didn't really like have that resource when we first started. And if we did, it was limited because I didn't know these people super well then. Like I was just starting to build friendships with them. So my pack, which is now named Leaky, by the way, Leaky was built in an LA blackout. Okay. So the guy who built my proton pack, his name's Ben Chester. Never seen the guy ever post another proton pack ever. Never seen him ever go like build props. But Ben Chester he was one of the guys who built R2D2 in episode 1.
Oh, wow.
That was his claim to fame. And that's why I was like, this guy's building my proton pack. Well, this poor guy received money in the mail for this proton pack. And he's like, bro, we just got hit with this, whatever storm it was. He's like, I'm working in the dark. I can put this project off, or I could kind of do it with what I got. And I was like, oh, dude, it'll be fine. That poor guy sent me that poor pack. You want to talk about improvisation, right? You know how you have like the bellows on the bottom of the proton pack, right? And it's these circles with the stick through it, right? Yeah. It kind of looks like mine was literally a bolt with a bunch of washers attached to it, glued.
That's a classic way to do it.
It worked. My crank knob was a WD-40 lid that he fastened something to make it look like a crank knob.
Oh my gosh!
And, the shell was weak. It was very thin, very basic fiberglass.
Yeah.
And I was so long story short, my pack always broke, and I always bugged people to help me, people that were a lot better. And so I sat down one day and I discovered what RTF foam was. I think that's what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this rubber sealant glue that you put on something and it creates a waterproof seal, right? And we were ghostbusting. I mean, I was going out every week at one point, just walking around the cities of Chicago and greater Chicagoland. It could be rain, it could be bitter cold, it could be snowing, and we wanted our packs to be waterproof.
Yeah.
So I got a hold of this RTF glue thing from Menards, right? And I get back to my house and I'm gluing a seal around my proton pack frame. Well, your boy here got it on his hand. And they don't tell you that stuff's stronger than super glue. And the next thing I know, I glue my hand to my proton pack, to my Alice frame.
God. Oh, no.
I'm calling Jason Stat, right? I get on the phone. Jason. Yeah. hey man, I'm using this mechanic stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, uh-huh. And he's like, yeah, we use that to like waterproof seals around doors on cars, man. You know, that stuff's serious business. He's like, you usually have to use like really special gloves, whatever it was. I can't remember. It's been ages. And I was like, yeah, dude, how do you get it off your skin? What? Yeah, a better question. How do I release my hand? And so I told him, and he was like, bro, I don't know what to tell you. I had to get a nail file and nail file my hand off of it to the point where I can get it and scrape the top layer off of my skin. And I had to wash my hands with like nail polish remover to get it off of my skin. Yeah, that was the first time I ever glued myself to a Ghostbusters prop.
There's more?
There's more. C2E2 several years ago, the night before night one, I'm doing last minute inspection on my belt. And I was doing something, I can't remember. But for whatever reason, I had to glue something and I was too lazy to take it off the belt and I left it on the belt and to glue it. The next thing I know, my hand was glued to my utility belt.
Oh, no.
That came off. That sucked, though.
Yeah, that sucks, but it's like doable to get removed.
That's not the only time I ever did something like that either.
Oh no.
Yeah, this isn't going to be the Bob Bill's Dangerous Pop. This isn't Bob's prop mishap hour, I promise. This is the last story. This one's my favorite. So on your utility belts in the movies, we had these things called belt gizmos, right? And by we, I'm not in the movies, but the Ghostbusters have these things called belt gizmos, and they have different functions. Most of the time, it would be like a heartbeat monitor or something. So kits were not common back when I first started ghostbusting. Usually it was like somebody built one, but the kits were really expensive. Not like how they are now where you can just 3D print one, right? So I was like, screw it, man. I'm just going to build my own, something that looks really similar, right? So I got a tape measure holster. I cut the bottoms out so it sticks down. My buddy Danny is like this technomancer, as I call him. So he collects like just boxes of junk of electronics. And I used this old soundboard from a computer and it looked really cool. And on the bottom, I got an old cell phone charger that had the spiral. I cut it off. I attach it. I'm like, oh man, I got to make the daughter board. The daughter board's the little thing that the motherboard attaches to. So the daughter board. I'm like, man, what am I going to build for that? And my buddy had an AC adapter that was cracked, and I kind of looked inside of it and I'm like, oh dude, there's a bunch of cool little bibobs in there. So I unscrew the plate on the AC adapter, right? And I drill a hole into it and I put a screw tape measure clip. I wear it on my belt, man. I got this metal guard cool thing that's swinging, and I got these cool bit bops. I call them bit bops, whatever. And I have this thing and I'm wearing it on my belt, and I got, I have it, and I'm at an event with Joe Gagliano, and Joe is a legitimate, I'm not going to dox him by any means, but Joe knows safety, right? He's a safety person, and he knows particularly like safety when it comes to materials. So Joe's sitting there staring at my belt one day, and I can't remember what event it was, but he's sitting there staring at my belt, and he's like, hey. I was like, yeah, what's up, dude? And he's like, that's what'd you do with it? How'd you make your daughter board? I'm like, oh, dude, it's really cool, right? I unscrewed an AC adapter, and he's like, I need you to take that off right now. I'm like, oh, why is that? And he's like, brother, you took the static plate off of it. And I was like, what's a static plate? And he was like, you know why AC adapters have this really giant hunk of plastic and why you're not supposed to be able to get inside them? And I was like, no, why? And he's like, bro, there's like capacitors still active in there. And he's like, so you just drilled right through it and almost hit the capacitor. And he's like, that could easily kill you. I was like, oh, just a little electrical shock. He's like, oh no, however many volts it was, I don't remember. I'm not that guy. But he laid it down for me, how many hertz it was, whatever. And he's like, dude, that's enough to stop your heart. So I legitimately built a prop that almost killed me.
And wore it.
Yes.
Multiple times, it sounds like.
I did, yeah. I wore it a couple times. You are correct.
Oh my God. In chat, someone asked, is this the fridge glue story? But we don't
we're not telling that story.
We don't
that
have
has not Ghostbusters related.
Fair.
Yeah.
But Webb said you're being all kinds of clever.
Oh yeah, no problem. I on that day I was banned from making Ghostbuster props. I have never made another Ghostbusters prop. There are two types of people in this community, right? You have your builders that are super into building this stuff, screen accuracy, and they're all about, that concept of I want to get my hands dirty and really build it.
Yeah.
And then you have people that wear it. I am one of those people that wear it.
Same.
I have nothing but respect for them prop builders. I'm very jealous of the prop building community. I wish desperately I could be that guy, but I'm not, and I never will be.
Yeah, we're very definitely Windy City, very lucky to have the folks that we do who are insane with prop building. And I know a lot of other franchises too have some really, really incredible builders.
Yeah.
So do you, outside of the pack, items like that, do you collect other Ghostbuster items?
So here's the thing, right? You get to a certain point in your life where you find your hyperfixations laying around and you acquire a bunch of stuff. At one point in my life, and I still am, I do the comic book thing. I collect physical media. I'm a major retro video game and video game merchandise collector. Movie posters, the list goes on, right? And I'm still into all of this stuff. So when it comes to Ghostbusters, I have room issues because I don't have room. And it's a tough sell for me because like Ghostbuster toys to me are all the same thing. How many times can I collect a Winston, Ray, Egon, Peter? Like how many times do I have to buy those figures before I get tired of them, right? So I have one of each of the guys, and I have the original Mattel sets.
Nice.
Normal, no, the 12-inch ones.
Yeah,
I have those. Those are like the Ghostbuster toys I have. I have my Extreme Ghostbusters line.
Yeah,
and then I also have the the guys as they were older in Afterlife.
Gotcha.
And then I have like one of each of the other characters. Like I have the Louis Tully when he was wearing the GB2 outfit. I have the Janine they did from Diamond Select. So I buy the toys just like one. So I have one of it. I don't need 100 Egons. You know what I mean? I don't need that. I don't buy everything with a Ghostbusters logo on it because I do enough with the franchise, right? I've done well over 1,000 events in my career in my 10 years of doing this. So it's like I put time and effort into doing my events. I've traveled literally the country being a Ghostbuster. I've been coast to coast in the literal sense. So all my Ghostbusting collecting is more memory based and more experience based than it is like a physical Ghostbusters thing. I lied. I actually have one really cool piece of Ghostbusters merch that I don't ever show off. This is the Ghostbusters. I have this. This is cool. It does work. So yes, I do have one like different piece of Ghostbusters merch, and I have some of the Ectos. I've done the popcorn buckets because I like the pop movies, so that kind of falls in the line. I have the popper and all that jazz. So I don't have a ton, but I collect what I can. And then I got my dream prop last year, which made me so happy.
What's your dream prop?
The sniffer.
Ah!
Would you like to know why I was excited to have a sniffer, Krystyn?
Why is that your dream prop? Why are you excited?
Because I don't have to wear a proton pack then. I could wear a blue lab coat, a white dress shirt, some slacks, some nice looking shoes, and the sniffer fits around my neck as a satchel.
Allegedly, in chat, allegedly you did it to be like Jacob.
Well, oh yeah, actually no, I did not do that to be like Jacob, but that's the first time I ever met Jacob. He was in his
Was he have
commercial gear? Yeah,
nice. He also Circle City, which I assuming is Jacob right now, asks, "Do you have any Ghostbuster storyboards?"
I do not. I do, but it's stored at Jacob's house.
Yeah,
it's stored at Jacob's. I keep it there for safekeeping. Jacob has an original storyboard for the first film.
Yeah.
And I, over the years, said it was mine or I'm going to murder him for it. I offered him a large chunk of change for it once. He turned me down. But yeah,
it's wonderful.
It is pretty cool to see in person. It's almost like I've done many years ago when this is how I got involved with Circle City. The Indianapolis Children's Museum had a Sony exhibit that went around, and at the exhibit they had Bill Murray's proton pack from GB1 there. So I've seen stuff like that, like screen use props, blah blah blah. But I've never seen a storyboard. Oh, GB2, thanks, Norm. GB2, and so I had an opportunity to see like Bill Murray's proton pack, which was really cool. But the storyboard blows it out of the water. I'm not going to mention what scene he has because
fair.
Actually, I will. And I'm going to be as PG as possible about it. Do you remember when the female ghost visits Ray?
As soon as you said you're going to be PG about it, I assumed that's exactly what you're going to say.
So he has that in his collection. Actually, it's in my collection. I just store it at his house.
He's just keeping it for you in the meantime. That's fair. I feel like all the questions in chat, it's like dangerous because I feel like there's so many inside jokes people have with you that I think it's an innocent question to ask. And it turns out to be either an inside, like a not as serious. Folks in the chat also want to know, how's your doll collection going?
You could tell them I said I hate them.
Excellent. Chat.
Dolls.
Guess what?
Dolls scare me pretty bad.
And actually that leads me to so Bob, why are you Bob After Dark?
So Bob After Dark originally was this concept. This was before I was a Ghostbuster even. Bob After actually maybe I was a Ghostbuster. I can't remember. Actually I was a Ghostbuster. Facebook Live was this thing, right? It became a thing. Mm-hmm. And live streaming wasn't, it was at its infancy, and I always wanted to be a content creator. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to do like YouTube videos and stuff. That's why I went to film school. I wanted to make movies, and then I didn't do that. Facebook Live becomes a thing. I'm like, this is like the bare minimum effort for me to be a content creator, man. And so I turned on my phone. I'd go to Facebook Live. I'd sit in what people called my closet because it looked like a closet because my bedroom's kind of small. And I would go live and I would talk about whatever came to mind. There was never any logic. Half the show would be me just saying hello to people in chat. It was terrible, but people loved it. I kid you not. I kept that format up for an entire year of this concept of Bob After Dark. And I had people legitimately asking me about it, So fast forward a year, I had my now producer for radio and my podcast producer, Tony Panic. I met him in college. Come to find out my dad and his dad grew up together when they were kids. So it's kind of a small world.
Yeah.
We lost Norm. It's fine.
That's okay.
So I go forth, right? And I meet Tony Panic, and he was just, him and I were talking, and he's like, I really like that Bob After Dark show. And I was like, oh yeah, what do you? And he was like, yeah, dude, you want to do it on the radio? And I was like, yeah, man. I kind of pitched it to him. He was like, yeah, but we need a centralized focus of what this is because the format you're doing isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the drawing board, right? I was like, okay, so I got this idea. I'm getting this radio show, 1 hour, 2 hours every week on Tuesday. And it's going to be called Bob After Dark. I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a nerdy show? Because everybody does a nerdy show, right? Do I talk about movies? And I'm like, how long can I stretch this Ghostbusters thing out for? I can't talk about Ghostbusters forever week after. I mean, some people do, and all the more power to them. It would drive me nuts.
Fair. Hey, we're here doing this.
Exactly. Well, this is different. This is a magazine show. Yeah. This was my baby. Okay. Don't pick on it. Thank you. So I get the product, right? And I was like, what am I going to do? And so it dawned on me, right? If there's 2 things in the universe I know, or 3 things in the universe I know movies, I know like the, video games and nerdy stuff, comic books, et cetera. I know about ghosts. I had a big interest in the paranormal ever since I was a little kid. Obviously Ghostbusters go hand in hand, and horror goes hand in hand. And I remember Linda Blair hosted the show in the 90s and the early 2000s called Scariest Places on Earth. And it was hosted by this tall Scottish psychic guy. And it was, Linda Blair would host it, and they would stick a family in these really haunted locations all over the world. Like one of the ones that stick out in my memory was they went to Vlad the Impaler's castle, and that always stuck out to me. And then, growing up, because I totally should have been, subjected to this as a child. Unsolved Mysteries was a thing, right? This TV show hosted by Robert Stack, and it's this guy in the trench coat, and he's like, and you too can help solve a mystery. And then that theme would hit and it would scare the hell out of you. So what it was what's the word I'm looking for? Characterization. There you go. They would, or reenactment. They would do reenactment. Yeah, they would do reenactment of like true crime cases that were never solved. So like murders, bank robberies. And then they would do like heart touching stories about like, hey, I was adopted as a kid.
Yeah.
And I, I never met my birth mom. And it was this tragic story about like the Vietnam War or something. Right. And then if you were lucky, which I loved Unsolved Mysteries regardless, but if you were lucky, you would get a paranormal subject on the show. And the episode that stands out to me the most was Resurrection Mary, which is the most famous ghost story probably in the world, because I travel all over the country speaking at cons, and I've had people come up to me like, oh yeah, Resurrection Mary, right? I'm like, yeah, famous story from the South Side of Chicago. So I went back to the drawing board, and at this time I was hanging out with a very interesting group of Ghostbusters called the Des Plaines Ghostbusters. They're
Hydrate.
some of my best friends in the entire world, but they do their thing. And so me and Ben, who's the leader of this Des Plaines Ghostbusters, we would have like a cocktail and we would talk about ghosts. He's a big paranormal enthusiast too. So I'm sitting there chit-chatting with him about this Bob After Dark thing, and he was like, dude, paranormal. And I was like, yeah. So I remember he gave me 3 books, and it was the Encyclopedia of Demons, Angels, Deities, and something else. It was the Vampire Encyclopedia, and can't remember the third one. But I got 3 books, and he's like, here, take these from my library. Like, they're yours. Learn about something. And my first episode, I went, and I was talking like this at the radio studio. It was called Bob After Dark, and I would talk in this really low whisper, and my producer was named Count Panic. And I kept that weird, spooky, goofy persona for about 3 months until finally people were like, just be yourself. And so I took Bob After Dark, and I became Bob the guy, which people ask me all the time, well, is there a difference between Bob the show host and Bob in real life? And I'm like, I don't know where that begins and ends most days, right? Because I'm a cult of personality, as some people say. Hydrate.
Oh yeah, we're getting yelled at to hydrate.
Yeah.
Oh, there's 2 more hydrates we missed. Thanks, guys. You're not even warning me.
I tried. You just kept talking.
You could just wave your hands and be like, Bob, shut up.
No, yeah. No, remember it's when this is the signal when you get real close. And like
you could just wave your hands, or you could just tell me to shut up. One of the 2, guys. I talk a lot, I don't know if you guys noticed that in 42 minutes. I don't think you guys even got anything. I don't think we learned anything this episode. This could be a
you're not allowed to have glue.
And I learned how Bob After Dark came about.
Yes.
I did not know any of that before.
Yeah, no, you could just tell, and I saw in the chat, you could just tell Bob to shut it and he works. Thanks, Jacob. So
did you see, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but further up, Jacob said that he actually bequeathed the piece he's holding for you. I'm in the will now for it.
I hope you don't sleep at night. Because you're going to feel a pillow just
slowly. Anyways, as you were saying.
Yes. Do you have another question for me? I'm just talking at this point.
No, I know. One of my questions was like, how did it all come about? So like,
so that's so I started it off as a hobby, and I'm like, dude, I want this to be my career, right? So I'm in my like 5th year at this point, and it's more or less my full-time job now. I do Twitch streaming where I play spooky video games. I have a podcast that comes out every week. I do conventions all over the country. I have a TV show in the works. The pilot's shot. I just hung out with Dan Aykroyd at a private event, and then my appendix, like, So that was fun. My appendix knew the assignment. I get to push Bob After Dark to Dan Aykroyd again, and then my appendix decided to go on me. So that was fun, and I'm still dealing with that now.
Yeah. Are you feeling better
No.
though? Like, are you healing process?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Oh,
You
no.
are getting I've been Twitch streaming just about almost every night since I've gotten back home from the hospital.
Yeah.
And that requires no effort. I mean, there's effort, but like I just kind of sit and chit chat. This is like you're very lucky. This is how much energy you get out of me.
Fair. I feel that.
Yeah.
Right. What is your favorite part about Bob After Dark, about having the podcast, about being able to do all these things and interview people and do research and share like all the spooky things with people? What's your favorite part? Like, what keeps you doing this?
The fact that I get to expose people to things out there that may or may not be real. What I mean by that is I get to expose people to ghost stories and stuff, which is cool. You know, ghosts are cool. But one of my favorite aspects about my show is when I do lore based on culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's times I talk about like for example, I just did an episode this Tuesday about Walking Sam, which is a Lakota Nation tribe story. You know, I've talked about like the Wendigo, which is, you know, Algonquin tribe stories and all the way up through like the Inuit people and the Ojibwe. I've talked about like the Polish mermaids, you know, there's all these creatures that lurk in the dark all around the world. And it's kind of cool to be able to present that to people in such a way that like I bring about it in like a sense of humor, because I think paranormal people take themselves way too serious.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool to be like, you know, I'm going to, you know, I kind of get to do this and I get to laugh about it, but I also get to present something and I get to carry on this tradition of being more or less a bard, right? Because a lot of these times, these stories that come from like native tribes, they weren't written down. A lot of these stories are just literally passed down from generation to generation verbally. And it's just now with the medium of the internet that we actually get like the little that we have left of it written down. And even though I may not be a member of that tribe, I may not be a member of that culture, I get to share a piece of that with the world. And I get to shine something about why people are so different, but they're also very much the same at the end of the day. You know, I look at stories about the yokai in Japan, which is like their definition of like ghost cryptid, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look here in America, and yeah, they might be a little different characteristics wise, but you know, at the end of the day, the Japanese people have the yokai, we have ghosts, and they're more or less the same thing. Mm-hmm. So here we are thousands of miles away, an ocean divides us, but we have this common ground of the paranormal and the spooky, right?
Yeah.
And so I get to be that guy that kind of try to unite the world from ghosts. And that's why I like doing my job. It's so cool because I get to experience that. I get to live culture. And that's, you know,
Bob,
it's kind of cool.
The uniter of ghost nations.
Pretty much.
Anything coming up? I know you mentioned obviously the pilot's been shot, but anything coming up in the short term for Bob After Dark we should know about besides that?
I'm streaming after this, twitch.tv/Bob After Dark plays. You guys should, after this show, you can go then watch me play the best atmospheric horror game of this decade called Pools. I stream just about every day these days on Twitch. So you guys can check that out. I'm down with medical stuff, so like my live calendar is paused.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything on the docket because I don't know what's going to happen with me medically. So in the meantime, I have the podcast that comes out every week. My newest episode just came out on Tuesday. What was my episode about on Tuesday? Norm, what was my episode about on Tuesday?
The live show?
Yeah, no, not the one I just did. Last week's episode. That's now a podcast.
Oh, last week's episode was... Oh, man, now you asked me and my brain shut down.
Anyway, so my new... Oh, I do. I have a panel at Gen Con this year, which is really cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and I'll have all the details on that posted, which is really cool. Thanks, Vix. I saw in the chat, Webb says, what's my PAX name? Leaky. Leaky, because there's many cracks and odd things going on there.
Bob, with when you're talking about the games you play, though,
Mhm.
so sometimes here on this channel, you come and join and we play games here. What
Yeah.
is your favorite and least favorite Ghostbusters specific game?
Ghostbusters 2009, right? That's the year it came out, Norm.
Yep.
Ghostbusters 2009 is not only the best Ghostbusters video game, it's in my top 5 favorite video games of all time.
Wow.
Because it does everything that it should, being a pseudo sequel, because we never thought we'd get Answer the Call or Afterlife even. So all we got was Ghostbusters 1, 2, Extreme, Real, obviously. So 1, Real, 2, Extreme. And then we went through this long bout of nothing for decades, you know, pretty much. And then so we get to 2009 and Ghostbusters comes out and they treat it like just brilliant. You know, the gameplay's great too. I enjoy that. The game handles and you play it like you're a Ghostbuster. And it's kind of cool because if you play the Xbox, PlayStation, PC version, it's all the same game. But then you get to the Wii version and it's completely different.
Oh,
and it's so, yeah.
And PlayStation 2.
And PlayStation 2.
Okay.
And it's cool because, you know, and it's heart-wrenching for me because I'm friends with his daughter now. It was last time we got Harold Ramis as Egon. And
yeah.
You know, we had all 4 guys together in the same room, and we got a nod at Louis Tully, like in that, which we haven't gotten yet in 2 movies or a brand new video game. It's like, guys, Louis existed. Can we just maybe like, you don't have to bring him on screen, but can we acknowledge that he's exists?
Say his name.
Say his name, something. Oh, who does your taxes? Then someone just looks at him and says, oh, I got a guy. I'd be happy with that because Louis is one of my favorite characters, the second favorite behind Ray. So Ghostbusters 2009 is my favorite Ghostbusters game and one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
My least favorite Ghostbusters game is Ghostbusters on NES.
Boo.
I have never gotten to a bust. People have watched me run out of gas on the way to the bus. I've never actually, I know how the game is supposed to work. I've never gotten it to work. And then there's the wonderful challenge of me, which I know the 3 of us are talking about doing an Extra Life 24-hour stream this year. We're going to have to set up a save state where it's me jumping the pit with the Ecto in Ghostbusters 2 just to watch me see how many times it takes me for me to miss that. So yeah, no, Ghostbusters 1 on NES, you could throw that thing in the garbage. Extreme Ghostbusters on Game Boy is atrocious. Oh my god, I forgot about that one. That game hurts to play.
That's you play that one when you've played that one live.
I played that one twice. I refused to touch it.
Yeah, that one was like the mechanics, like watching it. It's like I could tell you'd like hit a button and like there's a pause. Like the jumps were rough.
No, it's tough. That game sucks.
Well, yeah. Well, and which one now? Which one is Penguin Witches?
That is the real Ghostbusters on Game Boy.
That is okay. Okay.
Yeah, Penguin Witches, and I don't like that game either, but I like it for the Penguin Witches. And
Penguin Witches. If y'all in chat don't know about Penguin Witches, make sure to catch our streams. Yeah, make sure to catch our.
We haven't done one in a while. I got to come back and do it at some point.
Yeah, we need to do that.
But when we get those up and running, or you can look back at our videos previous.
Go back.
And check it out. And Penguin, we always end with Penguin Witches because it's the most fun.
Good save there.
Thank you. I was about to just cough in everyone's ears. So, Bob.
Yes.
Anything that we didn't talk about today that you'll need the world to know that you just can't say on your own streams?
So this is my 10-year anniversary of being a Ghostbuster, right?
That's pretty cool.
And I've experienced things in 10 years of wearing a potato sack than I have probably most people. I've been to an Emmy award-winning producer's condo. She just randomly invited me to in River North, and I've held her Emmy. I've been in bank vaults that you're not supposed to be at. I've been underground in tunnels that have been abandoned for years.
Yeah.
I've been to 2 red carpet premieres as a Ghostbuster. I've met famous actors. I have a group of friends that I don't ever get to see in real life that are some of my best friends in like of all time. Like, and I don't ever get to see. And I've made some of my best friends in the entire world. Like, I call people the khaki family because that's realistically what it is. You know, I stood up at one of my best friend's weddings in New York, and I met him because he's a New York City Ghostbuster and he sits on the board. And I stood up at his wedding. I flew out to New York and I got to meet his family, right? And they're like, "Oh, you flew here from Chicago. How do you know Dan?" And I was like, Ghostbusters. And, you know, and here's his like best man was his brother and like his best friend for like 10, 15 years and his brother-in-law, whatever. And here's me. And it's like, I've known Dan for like 5 years, but we slept in the same bed together when he came to Chicago. And
that's how friendships are made, you know?
yeah. And it's this weird thing, right? Like I have a weird following now for Bob After Dark. I have fans, and it's really strange to say that out loud. But it's weird because I'm always, no matter, and I'm going to steal this line from Afterlife, it's like, no matter, I may be a podcaster, but I'll always be a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
It's just this thing that I've done for the past 10 years. I have a shirt with my face on it that Jacob Bartlett drew.
Yeah, he asked in chat. He asked if he can sell.
No, you cannot sell.
Year anniversary.
Sold enough of my merch. You own a Bob Bob shirt, don't you?
I have the Wendy's or the Circle City.
0 points for you for not wearing that shirt tonight while you're hosting. But you know,
hey, I've got the Ray Stance shirt. So
yes, and I hate to use this term because it's not me. But Ghostbusters News just like did an article about me, Jacob, Ryan, and Peter. Ryan, New York City, Jacob, obviously Circle City, and Peter from Hudson Valley. We're working on this Ghostbusters database. Whoyougonacall.org, look it up. We're compiling all the Ghostbuster groups around the world onto this one directory where people could go find it. Ghostbusters News called the four of us pillars of the community. Yeah. I don't believe that terminology, but some people do, I guess. And that, like, it's kind of cool to like show up somewhere and there's a bunch of strangers who I don't know. And they're like, "Oh my God, it's Bob Anderson." And I'll be like, "Yeah, hey, how's it going, dude?" But I have a story just about like every franchise at this point. I probably know who either runs your team, I know somebody on your team, or I know what charity you do just from the sheer stuff I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah. Now there is a rumor I needed to address with you as well.
Yeah.
Allegedly you are Mothman, and to the point where you're look at your name card. It's that spooky. It got changed.
I am not. I am not a. Never mind.
Okay. so
I'm waiting for the question so I can get out of here. I gotta start my stream. Norm, post links. Post links, Norm. Post the links to my Twitch channel right now in chat before people leave.
Bob, why do you bust?
Why do I bust? It started. There's an answer from 10 years ago and there's an answer now. Why I busted 10 years ago was because it was different and at a time of my life that was like the most difficult. I shouldn't be here. We'll just leave it at that. 10 years later, I do it because I make a difference in somebody's life. There's people out there that were going through the same things I was going through 10 years ago. And I bring a smile to people's faces. I bring a smile to sick kids in hospitals. I've made friends and family. So I genuinely make somebody happy, and that is why I bust. Oh, side note to that, the less popular answer is to prove my mother wrong because she said being a Ghostbuster wasn't a real job.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming online on your own show.
You guys can check me out, Bob After Dark, wherever you find podcasts at. Bob After Dark is available wherever you find podcasts at. Say that real quick, please.
I was just about to say, do you have anything to plug? But go for it.
I have lots of things to plug. Bob After Dark is available wherever you find podcasts at. Go Apple, Spotify, YouTube now even. You could go subscribe to my YouTube at The Bob After Dark. Follow me on social medias. By the way, sorry guys, I'm stretching my arms out a lot. It's because I'm really bruised up from the past few days of needles and dyes and stuff for scans. But anyway, Bob After Dark, wherever you find podcasts at, Bob After Dark social media, you find me, I'm there. Twitch, I know the link was just posted, so you guys could go find me on Twitch after this, because I'm about to be playing a very scary game called Polls. I am going to push this literally till the 60-minute mark just to prove a point, because then I could say that I cut it at an hour and I'm not going over. So find me wherever you find that stuff at. Podcasts are out there. And Krystyn, you did a really good job. Thank you for squeezing 10 years into 1 hour.
Roughly. I know there's a lot more we could have talked about, so thank you for
10,
hanging out.
9.
And everyone, check out our social medias as well. Check out La Rabida, the charity that we support here at Windy City. And James, anything else?
Not currently, no.
We're 6 seconds late. We might just roll us into another hour, guys. Come on, let's do it.
Out of here. Everyone have a great night. See you next week.
Have a good one, everybody.
Good night, everybody.